person, and she was on the ground, and we called the medics, and the firefighters are 1 block away taking care of her. This is the guy who ran over her. The cops have not asked him to get out of the car. The cops have not handcuffed him. When we surrounded the car, the cops arrested someone who actually didn't do anything.
An ugly scene in D.C. this weekend. Occupy protesters storming the convention center where a conservative event was being held inside. Michelle Fields, the reporter, facing those protesters outside. And Michelle joins us now. Michelle, thanks for joining us. So take it through us. This was a conservative a conference going on. What were they exactly? Tell me what the Occupy protesters were, in fact, protesting.
Well, their chants were against corporate greed, but the only coherent message they had was make sure David Koch and his friends don't get out of the convention center. So what they did is they completely blocked the entire building, and they blocked all the intersections so cars couldn't get through. And they just wanted them to stay inside. They knocked on the windows. They had kids lined up, little children lined up in front of the door so that if they could try to get out, they would hit the children.
And Michelle, do these protesters, and I admit I haven't walked through any of these protesting crowds, do they realize the message they're sending to middle America, to families with kids, the difference between a Tea Party, I don't know, a controlled protest versus what appears to be, I don't know, out of control, dangerous, assault-ridden protests that don't seem to signify anything American at all?
Yeah, I mean, they're not protesters. What they are thugs. They knocked over 2 elderly women. As soon as I arrived, they started chanting F Michelle Fields, F the Daily Caller, obviously more explicit than that. They threw water at me. They blocked our camera with a cardboard piece of paper so that we couldn't tape anything. They jumped inside my interviews so I couldn't do any interviews. I mean, they're violent. They're out of control.
Michelle, hang in there. We have a soundbite of that exact going on. Take a listen to this for our audience.
What did you make up today? What's your headline for this article going to read?
Don't talk to the other caller. Crazy. Holy don't talk to me. That's what I'm saying. I made it from Occupy Wall Street. I made it from Occupy Wall Street, but these are my brothers and sisters here. They tell me not to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you then.
Yeah! Michelle, were you in fear for harm or your life at any point?
Yeah, at one point I went to speak to a police officer who tried talking to them and telling them not to harass me, but the event ended up getting so out of control that the police officer couldn't watch over me. But the interesting thing is that I'm Hispanic, my camera woman is Afro-Caribbean, all the police officers they had problems with were African-American, all the cars that they didn't allow to go through had African-American drivers. If the Tea Party had done this, Obama, Nancy Pelosi, they would be saying that they were racist. But these people do it and there's no problem with it.
And just explain how the cops, I mean, I can't imagine a cop wanting to be there. I mean, all the other things going on in the world, and they have to, I guess, risk harm and injury trying to keep these protesters in line. What's their attitude?
I mean, they were just really ill-prepared for this, actually. There were about like 10 or 15 cops and hundreds of protesters. So I think that they were actually in fear for themselves because they didn't have that many people. And apparently Americans for Prosperity tried calling 911 4 times to ask for more backup, and 911 operators just hung up on them.
All right, and if I'm not mistaken, the Koch brothers were inside that conference, is that right?
David Koch was inside. And what's interesting is David Koch walked out and threw the protesters, and the protesters didn't even recognize him. Right. These people don't even know who they're protesting.
Well, I bet you my good friend Mark Levin, if he was speaking at that conference, by the way, if he walked through, they would have recognized him or Breitbart. But Michelle Fields, I'm going to say thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, Wall Street.